is find your purpose, fall in love with it, and go do it. She's putting this into practice for herself and others, enabling entrepreneurs to develop skills and scale up in South Africa, and also other parts of the world. She's an ambassador and member of the UN Women Global Innovation Coalition for Change and is a lead driver for the GOOD program. So on that note, let's give her and the panelists a very warm welcome.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm particularly interested to see that there's more men in the room versus female, but it's a good start. We're very excited to be here today, and I think the topic is very critical and very pertinent, something that's not going to go away and something that we need to address. But to start off, I want to hand over to my esteemed panel, and they're the experts, starting over here with Laura, to do a brief introduction about herself and what she does, and we can move on to the questions.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Laura Connell. I'm one of the principal investors at Bolton Capital, based in London. So we are the most active Series A investor, investing across regions such as Iberia, France, Nordics, Germany, and of course the UK. And thrilled to be here to talk about this really important topic. So I can't wait to dig in.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm the founder and CEO of 15 Tech. So 15 Tech is a new platform, inclusive platform, to share and match with women in tech. We are really building the most ambitious pipeline of women in tech. So basically now in Europe, but tomorrow globally, and connect them to the rest of the ecosystems. It's been corporates, VCs, accelerators. And I was a former managing director of Willa. This was the largest incubator dedicated to female founders in Europe, so I pretty well know about this topic.
Good afternoon, buenos dias a todos. I'm Anne Ravanona. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Invest Her, and I'm on a mission to help close the $300 billion funding gap for women entrepreneurs. Did you know it was that big? It's really that big. And so how we do that is we help early stage women entrepreneurs learn about funding and get ready for investment so they can come and go to Laura looking for the money. And I'm also an international women's advocate to be a change maker, to help change the hearts and minds of people so that we can close that funding gap.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Cyril, and I'm right now the CEO of a school dedicated to sales people that is called Rocket School. And after creating and selling different companies, about 10 years ago, I decided to switch to education to have a bigger impact on the world. And before creating Rocket School, I manage a French computer school, very big, that is called Epitech, with like 5,000 students. And I'm very pleased to share about it, because in tech, there is not enough of women, and we work on it, and I have things to say about it.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. I think diversity and inclusion in terms of diversity, people with disabilities, gender equality, all of these things, diversity in terms of race as well, it is very pertinent to us. And we know that business is a force for good, and we need everybody in there to make it a force for good. Now, I find that even though we have the sustainability goals, we still have a huge gap to address in terms of a diverse environment at the workplace. So I'd like, let's start with you, Cyril. Tell us about the challenges you faced in your environment and exactly what the gaps are.
Okay, so I'm going to speak about the big computer schools I manage. 10 years ago, I became Chief Operational Officer of these big French computer schools. And as you know, perhaps, when you start these kind of jobs, you need to have a whole vision of the company, and then you're trying every services. So it was on Saturday, it was an open day, and we were waiting for students to recruit them and to show them the school. We were 2 men, and then 2 women arrived, and we welcomed them. We start showing them the school. We climb the stairs. We arrive in the classroom, and in the classroom, we saw about 100 students. Most of them, 98%, were men. And then we start working, and suddenly I noticed that the students saw us. And all of them were looking at us, not looking at us, looking at the two women. And just imagine 200 eyes looking at these two women. Then we continue to walk, and I noticed on computer screen background some nude girl, or not nude, but in bikini. I was a bit upset about that. And then we go away, and I noticed some students just turn up and start walking. There's not a lot of girls in computer school, so it was quite strange. And I didn't feel comfortable for the women that were visiting the school. If you were there, will you apply to the school? Of course, no. One of our biggest problems is that once you have too much people, too much men, or too much women in your company, in your services, it's perhaps even too late to change. So perhaps after we're going to share about how we can work on it.
And of course, have a woman to introduce them. So a female joining you when they first come in to introduce them to the rest of the class. I think that should help a great deal.
One of the ideas to help is that it's to show girls, welcoming girls, to show them that it's possible.
Absolutely, that's great. What about you?
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations for Cyril for being the token man today on our panel.
Thank you.
Doesn't happen very often, and we're great to have you and to have a feminist, meaning a feminist is somebody who believes in equal opportunity between men and women. And so who's a feminist in this audience then? Oh, come on, show up those hands. Oh, no more. Yes, that's great. So I think one of the challenges when it comes to funding and access to funding that I'm working on is the whole fact that today only 2.2% of venture capital goes to female-only led firms. 2.2%. There's about 16% that goes to mixed teams, and all the rest of the pie goes to, you guessed, all male teams. And so this is a big, big challenge, part of which is due to the fact of unconscious bias. Some of it is conscious, most of it's unconscious. It's, we've been living in a man-made world, made for men, built for men, and therefore, when we're investing in companies, we're going to invest in the ones that hit the headlines. Like, who can name the top 3 women entrepreneurs in the world? Tell us. She's not actually an entrepreneur, but okay. She's a woman in tech, but yeah, she didn't start Facebook, but go ahead, keep going, yes. She's a good woman in tech. There's no wrong answer, I'm just...
It's not top of mind.
No.
Yeah, it's not top of mind, because if I ask the same who the best entrepreneurs in the world, we'd say Richard Branson, we'd say Steve Jobs, we'd say Jeff Bezos, etc. We have them, Elon Musk, they're rolling off our tongue. So actually, the key thing is that when it comes to access to money, like more than half of the population are women. So we're leaving half of the opportunity and the creativity behind because we're not funding the ideas that are coming to the table from those women. And for me, I call that a huge opportunity loss. So we can actually, change the world if we have more women being funded and their ideas being funded. Because guess what, guys and women? We see the world differently. Who agrees with that? So therefore, if we see the world differently, we see problems differently and therefore solutions differently. So I think one of the key challenges is not enough funding, not enough women investors, which I'll let Laura come to, and really a general awareness of the problem, because most people don't even know it exists, and that we've got to change.
Yeah. What about you? Tell us a little bit about your challenges that you faced with Karen.
Yeah, so my challenges, I have a lot, but it was more about female founders, we saw the challenges, and I want to say that we have no pipeline problem. We have 10 to 15% of women entrepreneurs in Europe. And we partner with Vivatex. This was one of the biggest events in tech this year. And we received 450 applications coming from 55 countries all over the world with a lot of AI startup. It was really crazy with a great turnover. We know that gender balanced startup are performing better than all male startups because the AI is really better. So this is not a pipeline problem, this is a process problem. So we need to change. So the unconscious bias, clearly, the questions are not the same for women and for male. So investors are asking prevention-oriented questions for women. That for 66% of the population, and 68% of promotion-oriented question for males. So that means, how do you conquer the market for a man? And how will you success for women? Just see the position of your body when you have like this kind of question. So we need to master the code as a woman, as a female founders. We need to know the rules, and there is a lot of things we don't know about. So that's the job of today. So this is not a pipeline program. If you open the door, if you stop the pitching process, just to tell you a story, Microsoft Reactor in London stopped the pitching process. This is a scale-up program, so this is not the baby early stage startup. They got like 35% of female co-founders in less than 1 year just by stopping that. So it's mean putting a form, looking at the soft skills, you will talk about that, and having a conversation about the real business. The fact is that the code of the startup ecosystem is really cowboyish. This is a bro culture coming from the Silicon Valley. And the guys, we are educated to say we will kick ass the market, we are the best, we will win everything, give me the money. But the fact is that now, 83% of the IPOs are not sustainable model. And you saw with WeWork, it's like we have really a big problem because we are faking something. We are losing. It's like this growth scalability. In fact, it's just something, it's a story. And when it comes to the true market, it's like something really difficult to understand. So we have no pipeline problem. We need to find the access, and we need to change the process. And in terms of women in tech, I will be like shortly, and just you will jump into after that, Cyril. But the problem is not the attraction today. Is that women are leaving tech, actually. When they are in the workforce, if you are like 1 or 2 women in your company, 45% of them are leaving definitely the tech after the first job. Why? Because we have a toxic culture inside. It's not like, when you have like 90, 10%, it's normal. You are like, between males, it's the same for a guy in a woman's team. It's terrible.
We'll address that as well. A special question for you on that. But what about you, Laura? What are the challenges you have in your environment?
Yeah, I think there are 2 ways that we think about it. And it's not just about diversity, it's really about inclusion, right? So it's one thing to have a diverse workforce, but that can often end up looking a lot like tokenism unless you actually actively include people in the discussion. But I'll start by really addressing this point that you mentioned, which is that, it's my job as an investor, it is just true, it is fact that diverse teams, not just talking about women, but social class, ethnicity, education, disability, we fundamentally know that those teams provide greater returns. So there is just a very practical point as an investor, which is it is in my interest, it is in all our interest to find diverse founders and encourage them to develop diverse teams and inclusive teams. Now, that's not to take away from the second point, which is, as you say, that there is a real kind of purpose for social good that these businesses play. And that's a critical one. I think there's so much discussion nowadays, rightly so, about responsible capitalism, etc., particularly for the bit of the economy that is the fastest growing bit of the economy for every Western or every developed economy. You simply cannot have the fastest growing bit of the economy not engaged with some key social and ethical issues. But, so not to treat it as a secondary point, but whenever I have discussions, I always start with that first one, which is, this is not just a kind of nice to have. If you're in the business of making money, you've got to look at diverse teams. It's in all our interest to do that.
So I want to talk about solutions because we've heard all of the problems, and I think we mustn't seclude this conversation to just women. When we look at inclusion at the workplace, we are looking at people with disabilities. We're looking at race. I'm from Africa, so you can imagine, we have a 57 million population, and we need to bring more black empowerment in, and we're looking at females that are joining, women that are joining. Yes, I'm not feminist, but we all agree on the same thing in terms of diversity. So I want to lay that question out to the panel for the 6 minutes we have left, starting with you, Laura, in terms of what are some of the things that we can look at in terms of solutions in order to create an inclusive working environment, looking at it all over in terms of diversity, gender equality, and as well as people with disabilities?
Yeah. So I think there are three important parts. That's the way we've broken it down, or certainly the way I think about it. The first is, in order to solve a problem, you've really got to identify the size of the problem. And the critical bit of that is gathering data, accurate data, around what the numbers actually are. For instance, it's fine and well to say that, as I just did, that diverse teams generate greater returns. I could have made that up for all we know. So there's been a huge effort in the last 12 to 24 months around putting increasing numerical data around that. Not least the work that Diversity VC does in the UK, putting a huge report together on the venture ecosystem so that we can clearly quantify and therefore start to create a fact-based narrative around the size of the problem and why it's a problem at all. The second bit of that, I think, is then becoming focused on a central strategy. For instance, if I take many VCs, everyone's trying to do separate things around diversity. This is something that most people recognize, not all, but most recognize we've got to do something about. And what you find, because it's a very autonomous industry, everyone in venture firms going off and doing their own sourcing, etc., that often there's a bit of a decentralized and less effective approach to treating diversity. So what we want to do and what we do as a firm is centralize the discussion, agree on targets, and then hold ourselves accountable to those targets.
Good points. And what about you, Cyril? What would you do in your environment? Because you're working especially in the STEM section as well.
Yes, when I created Rocket School, which is a school dedicated to salespeople, to leads acquisition, for the first class, we have a big specificity that we are recruiting people on their soft skills. We don't care about gender, about color, about diploma. We are recruiting people with soft skills. And for the first class, without taking anything in account, we get only 30% of women and 70% of men. So after that, I was a bit upset and I remember about the big French computer school. When you have too many men or women, it's too late. So we work about it with our team, and we look at the data, and we understand that at the very beginning of the process of the recruitment, we had 50% of men and 50% of women. So the question we ask, why? From 50%, we get down to 30%. And we speak a lot with the students, and we understand, it's our point of view, that most of the men were overestimating themselves, when the women, at the same time, were underestimating themselves. So in our second class, we take it into account, and we speak a bit much more with the women to understand if it was the case or not. And we get like 45% of women and 55% of men. So we need to take in account the thing that some of women are underestimating themselves when men are overestimating themselves. So perhaps it's one of the feedback we can give.
And in your environments, you work so closely in terms of providing access or giving the knowledge of access, especially for women, to funding, resources, networks, and markets. It's a bit tricky for us. We're a little bit, gentle when it comes to being more robust. Give us some points in terms of how we can get out there and make ourselves available to getting these resources.
I think the first thing is to remember we're talking about diversity and inclusion. Diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is like being invited to dance. So women and minorities need to be invited to dance. Okay, so that's the first thing. In order to make that happen, to help women access more finance, I would say three things. Number one, you need to learn. So learn about the funding game, learn who the players are, learn how to play the game, learn the vocabulary, and we can certainly help you with that. You also need to learn. You need to connect. So connect with other female founders and male founders who've done it. Connect with the networks. Connect with thought leaders. Come to the conferences here, and also connect with big corporates, accelerators, connect to supply chains that actually want to actively supply from female founders. And the last thing I would say is grow. You need to grow your confidence, you need to grow your network, and you also need to grow your diverse team when you are recruiting. So that you have to grow the pool of candidates when you're looking to fill a position. Make sure that you've got 50% female candidates in the pool. That's the first thing. And then once you've got them in-house, you need to grow them, you need to develop them and make sure that you develop the skills. So learn, connect and grow.
Carolyn, do you want to sum up for us in terms of from your environment how we could bring this all together in terms of pointers, the top 3 pointers?
First, from the point of view of women in tech, there's a lot of sporadic movement everywhere, but not a global place, so we need to build the qualified pipeline. We made a survey to ask to the tech ecosystem how they are searching the people and the women in tech. So recommendation, events, and social networks. The 3 places they are not in. So people are looking to diversify the pipeline. Corporates need to diversify because now there is new CSR policies. They need to, their corporate venture, open innovation department have criteria and they need to answer. And the new LPs now, who are funding the VCs, they're asking to track the data. So we need to build first a qualified pipeline of female founders and of talents today. And if you do that, you can help the tech ecosystem really to connect with them. It's not a question of women only who have to connect, who have to do the work or something like that. It's a question of helping the ecosystem to find them and really to know the numbers, to know where they are, and we need to do that. I think it's the first things we need to achieve, and because for male, you have Crunchbase, you have Intellist. We are not, because we are not raising funds. So we are not counting. So it's like the first things we need to do. And in terms of inclusion policy, I believe that we need to have paternity leave for men. We need to have equality for men too.
Absolutely.
That's one of my big fights. I'm board member of UN Women. And I really, truly believe that we need to have the same right for male and female, and we can share the responsibilities. It's one of my fight today.
Oh, that's been fantastic. I want to thank my awesome panel over here, and you've been such a great audience. Thank you also for Alvaro for introducing us. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.